The Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat was the most impressive room in the known universe. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. Massive pillars made of crystal from dead stars held up the roof. Representatives from 12 powerful alien species sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. They had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. They had never once doubted their right to do so. In the center of this magnificent room stood a small group of humans. They looked tiny and fragile compared to the aliens around them. Some of the alien representatives had scales that could stop bullets. Others had minds that could calculate faster than any computer. A few were so old that they remembered when humans were still living in caves on their little blue planet. Ambassador Vextheri of the Zorvani hegemony looked down at the humans with something close to pity. His species had 4 arms, skin like polished metal, and eyes that glowed with a soft purple light. He was considered handsome by Zorvani standards, and he knew it. More importantly, he was powerful. His family had helped write the laws that govern the galaxy. Today he had been given a simple task. He was to inform the humans that their outer colonies in the Kepler belt were being taken away. The Concordat had decided that humans were not using the space properly. Other species needed room to grow. The humans would simply have to accept this decision. Vextheri activated his translation device and began to speak. His voice echoed through the great hall like thunder. "People of Earth," he said, "the Galactic Concordat has watched your species with great interest. 300 years ago, you discovered faster-than-light travel. We welcomed you into the galactic community. We gave you access to our trade routes. We allowed you to establish colonies in spaces we designated for developing species." He paused to let his words sink in. The human delegation remained silent. Their leader, a woman named Alina Vasquez, watched him with calm brown eyes. She was the Secretary General of the United Earth Government, the highest position a human could hold. She was also, in Vextheri's opinion, remarkably unremarkable. No claws, no special abilities. Just a small woman in a simple gray suit. However, Vextheri continued, "The Concordat has determined that the resources in your Kepler belt colonies would be better utilized by the Rithkari Consortium. They require the minerals for their shipbuilding operations. Therefore, effective immediately, all human presence in the Kepler belt must be removed. You have 1 standard year to relocate your colonists. The Concordat thanks you for your understanding," he smiled, showing rows of perfect silver teeth. Around the hall, several alien representatives made sounds of approval. This was how things worked in the galaxy. The strong took from the weak. The weak accepted their place. It had always been this way. Alina Vasquez did not move. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply stood there for a long moment, looking at Vextheri as if she was trying to memorize his face. "I have a question," she said finally. Her voice was soft, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. Vextheri's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Of course, little ambassador. Ask your question. What happens if we refuse?" The hall went silent. Several alien representatives leaned forward in their floating chairs, curious to see how Vextheri would handle this unexpected response. The Zorvani ambassador laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Refuse?" He spread all 4 of his arms wide. "Dear child, I do not think you understand your situation. The Galactic Concordat has existed for 40,000 years. We have fleets that could turn your entire planet into dust in a matter of hours. We have weapons your scientists cannot even imagine. You have had spaceflight for 3 centuries. You are infants. What could you possibly do if you refused?" Alina Vasquez smiled. Later, when historians studied the recordings of this moment, they would spend years analyzing that smile. It was not a happy smile. It was not a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this question. It was the smile of someone who knew something that no one else in the room knew. "We could show you," Alina said slowly, "what humans do when someone tries to take what belongs to us." Vextheri felt something strange in that moment. It was a cold feeling in his chest, a sensation he had not experienced in many years. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear, but that was ridiculous. Why would he fear these primitive creatures? "Is that a threat, Secretary General?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "No, Ambassador. It is a promise." Lena turned and walked out of the Great Hall. Her delegation followed her in perfect silence. Not one of them looked back. Not one of them showed any emotion at all. They simply left, as if the most powerful gathering in the galaxy meant nothing to them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the Rithkari representative made a harsh barking sound that passed for laughter among his species. "Well," he said, "that was entertaining. I suppose we should prepare for whatever pathetic resistance they attempt." The other representatives joined in the laughter. The humans would send angry messages. Perhaps they would try to fight with their tiny fleet. It would be sad, really. Almost tragic. But in the end, they would learn their place, just like every other young species before them. 3 days later, the laughter stopped. It started with the communication networks. Human ships, stations, and colonies across 12 star systems went dark at exactly the same moment. Every beacon, every signal, every transmission simply stopped. It was as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off humanity's entire presence in the galaxy. At first, the Concordat assumed this was a technical problem. Then they sent scout ships to investigate. The scouts found the human colonies empty. Not destroyed. Not abandoned in panic. Empty. As if the humans had packed up everything they owned and simply walked away. Every piece of technology had been taken apart. Every computer had been wiped clean. Every fuel tank had been drained. The jump gates that connected human space to the rest of the galaxy had been disabled. Not destroyed, but locked with codes that the Concordat's best engineers could not break. The gates still stood there, perfect and silent. But they refused to work. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat, Vextheri read the reports with growing confusion. This made no sense. Where had the humans gone? How had they coordinated such a massive disappearance without anyone noticing? What were they planning? He remembered Alina Vasquez's smile, and the cold feeling in his chest returned, somewhere in the darkness between stars. Far from any planet or station that the Concordat knew about, 10,000 human warships held their positions in perfect formation. They were painted black, running silent, invisible to any scanner the galaxy had ever built. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral James Okonkwo looked at the holographic display showing the entire human fleet. His dark face was calm, his hands steady. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His parents had prepared for it. His grandparents had prepared for it. For 300 years, while the galaxy had laughed at humanity, his people had been building, planning, and waiting. The Admiral smiled. It was the same smile Alina Vasquez had shown in the Great Hall. "Send the first message," he said quietly. "Let them know that humanity has not disappeared. Let them know that we have simply stopped pretending to be weak." The war had begun. But it would not be the kind of war the galaxy expected. It would be something entirely new. Something that would change everything, and the galaxy would never laugh at. Earth again? 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy had grown comfortable again. The initial panic had faded. The Concordat's leaders had decided that the humans must have fled in terror. Perhaps they had found some distant corner of the galaxy to hide in. Perhaps they had simply given up. Either way, they were no longer a concern. The Zorvani hegemony wasted no time in claiming the Kepler belt. Commander Rethvel led the third fleet into what had once been human territory, expecting to find abandoned buildings and empty mining stations. What he found instead made him question everything he thought he knew. About the primitive species from Earth, the colonies were indeed empty. But they had not been abandoned in fear. They had been cleaned. Every single piece of human technology had been carefully removed. Every computer system had been wiped so thoroughly that not a single byte of data remained. The humans had even taken the wiring from inside the walls. They had drained the fuel from emergency generators. They had removed the filters from air recycling systems. It was not the work of people running away. It was the work of people who did not want to leave anything behind that could be useful to their enemies. Rethvel walked through an empty human apartment on one of the colony stations. The walls were bare. The floors were clean. There was no sign that anyone had ever lived here except for one thing. On the kitchen counter, someone had left a small note written in the Zorvani language. "Thank you for motivating us," the note said. "We needed a reason to stop pretending." Rethval crumpled the note in his fist. His scales turned dark red with anger. Who did these creatures think they were? The real problems began a week later. The jump gates that connected the galaxy were ancient technology. It's built long before any current species had achieved spaceflight. No one really understood how they worked. The Concordat simply maintained them and used them. When humans had first entered the galactic community, they had been given access to certain gates as a gesture of goodwill. Now those gates were locked. The Concordat's engineers had been working for months to break the encryption that the humans had installed. They had made no progress. The codes were unlike anything they had ever seen. Some engineers quietly admitted that the encryption seemed to be based on mathematical principles that the Concordat had not yet discovered. This was impossible. Of course, humans were primitive. Everyone knew that. But the locked gates remained locked, and no one could explain how. Creatures who had only been in space for 3 centuries had created codes that a 40,000-year-old civilization could not break. Then, the messages started. Commander Rethval received the first one while his fleet was stationed above a former human mining colony. His communications officer called him to the bridge with a trembling voice. On the main screen, there was a simple image of Earth's moon floating against the black emptiness of space. Below the image were coordinates. "What is this?" Rethval demanded. "We do not know, Commander. It appeared on our screens without any warning. We cannot trace where it came from." Rethval studied the coordinates. They pointed to a location in empty space, far from any star or planet. His instincts told him it was a trap. His curiosity told him he needed to know what was there. He sent 3 scout ships to investigate. They found a single human probe floating alone in the darkness. The probe was broadcasting one message in every language known to the galaxy. The message was simple: "You took our homes. We are taking your confidence." The scout ships tried to capture the probe for study. The moment they got close, it exploded. Not with enough force to damage the ships, but with enough force to destroy itself completely. The humans had left nothing to analyze. Over the following weeks, the galaxy began to experience strange problems. Navigation systems started giving wrong directions. Ships would jump through gates expecting to arrive at one location and find themselves somewhere else entirely. Trade routes that had worked perfectly for thousands of years suddenly became unreliable. Supply ships carrying food to military outposts would arrive at empty coordinates. The outposts they were supposed to reach had been secretly relocated to different positions without anyone knowing how or when. Nothing was destroyed. Nothing was damaged. Everything was simply wrong. The Concordat's military leaders held emergency meetings. They demanded answers from their intelligence agencies. The agencies reported the same terrifying conclusion. They had no idea where the human fleet was. They had no idea how large it was. They had no idea what the humans were planning to do next. This was not how war was supposed to work. War meant 2 fleets meeting in space and firing weapons at each other until one side was destroyed. War meant clear battles with clear winners. What the humans were doing was something different, something that the Concordat had no name for. Fear began to spread. Rumors traveled from planet to planet. Some said the humans had developed technology that made them invisible. Others claimed the humans had found allies among species the Concordat did not know about. A few whispered that the humans had never been primitive at all, that their weakness had been a disguise worn for 300 years. On a Zorvani colony world, a politician gave a speech dismissing these rumors. He called the humans cowards who were hiding instead of fighting. That night, someone painted a human flag on the wall of his house. Security cameras showed nothing. Guards saw nothing. But in the morning, the flag was there, and beneath it was written a simple sentence: "We are everywhere. We see everything. You cannot find us, but we can always find you." The politician resigned the next day. He never gave another public speech. in the darkness between stars, Admiral James Okonkwo watched reports of the chaos spreading across Concordat space. His fleet remained hidden, waiting for the right moment. Around him, 10,000 ships full of patient, determined humans held their positions in perfect silence. "Sir," one of his officers said, "the Concordat is assembling a massive fleet. 40,000 ships from 12 species. They intend to hunt us down." Okonkwo nodded slowly. He had expected this. In fact, he had planned for it. "Let them come," he said. "They still think this is going to be a traditional war. They still think we are going to line up our ships and fight them in open space. They have no idea what kind of war we are actually fighting." The officer looked uncertain. "And what kind of war is that, Admiral?" Okonkwo turned to look at the stars outside his window. Somewhere out there, the most powerful military force in galactic history was gathering to destroy humanity. They had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers, and more experience than Earth could ever hope to match. But they did not understand humans. They did not understand what 300 years of being laughed at and ignored had done to the human spirit. They did not understand that humans had been watching, learning, and preparing the entire time. "We are fighting a war of embarrassment," Okonkwo said quietly. "We are going to show the galaxy that all their power means nothing. We are going to prove that they cannot find us, cannot stop us, and cannot protect themselves from us. We are not going to destroy their fleet. We are going to destroy their belief that they are superior," smiled his grandfather's smile, the one that had been passed down through generations of Okonkwos who had served in Earth's military. "Fear is the first weapon," he said. "Confusion is the second. When your enemy does not know where you are or what you are planning, they become their own worst enemy. The Concordat will tear itself apart trying to find us. All we have to do is wait and watch." Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the greatest military force in history was searching for an enemy they would never find. And humanity waited in the shadows, patient and ready, preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The real war was about to begin. The Concordat's response to the human threat was the largest military gathering in galactic history. 40,000 warships from 12 different species assembled in the Vorthon Nebula. Their combined firepower could destroy 100 planets. Their crews numbered in the billions. Their commanders were veterans of conflicts that had lasted longer than human. Civilization had existed. Admiral Zethkai of the Zorvani hegemony was given command of this mighty force. He was old, experienced, and utterly confident. He had fought in 17 wars and had never lost a single battle. When he looked at the fleet under his command, he felt nothing but pride. "The humans think they can hide from us forever," he told his officers. "They are wrong. We will find them, and we will crush them. This war will be over within a month." His officers agreed with enthusiasm. How could they not? They had more ships than the humans had ever built. They had weapons that could crack moons. They had technology that humans could not even understand. What they did not have was any idea what was about to happen. The first incident occurred aboard Zethkai's flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest and most powerful ship in the Zorvani fleet. A massive vessel that stretched for 3 kilometers and carried enough weapons to destroy a small planet. Admiral Zethkai had made it his home for 40 years. He woke one morning to find that everything in his private quarters had been changed. His bed was gone. In its place was a small human sleeping pad decorated with pictures of cartoon animals. His desk had been replaced with a tiny table sized for a human child. His weapons, his medals, his family photographs. All of them had been removed and replaced with human children's toys. On his pillow, there was a note written in perfect Zorvani script. "We were here. We could have done anything. Think about that." "Sweet dreams, Admiral." Zethkai's screams of rage could be heard throughout the ship. Security teams searched every corner of the Eternal Dominion. They found no intruders. They found no evidence of how anyone had gotten in or out. The security recordings showed nothing unusual. It was as if the changes had simply happened by magic. Word of the incident spread quickly through the fleet. Other commanders laughed at first. Then, similar things began to happen on their ships as well. A Rithkari battleship discovered that all of its ammunition had been replaced with colorful candy. A Zorvani cruiser found that someone had reprogrammed its main computers to play human music instead of battle commands. A transport ship carrying supplies found that all of its fuel had been replaced with water, dyed the same color as fuel. No one was hurt. No ships were destroyed. But the message was clear. The humans could reach them anywhere. The humans could do anything they wanted. And the humans were choosing to embarrass them instead of killing them. The Concordat Council was not amused. They held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. This meeting was supposed to be completely secure. Only the 12 most powerful leaders in the galaxy were allowed to attend. The room was protected by the most advanced security systems ever built. Halfway through the meeting, every screen in the chamber flickered. The faces of the council members were replaced by a human documentary. It was a detailed film about the personal secrets of every single person in the room. Affairs, lies, hidden crimes, embarrassing moments, all of it was shown in perfect detail. Set to cheerful human music, Ambassador Vexteri watched in horror as his private messages to his secret lover were displayed for everyone to see. His affair had been hidden for 20 years. Now every council member knew about it. Worse, the documentary was somehow being broadcast to news networks across the galaxy. By the end of the day, billions of beings would know his shame. His political career ended within hours. He was not the only one. 3 council members resigned before the week was over. 2 more faced criminal investigations. When their hidden crimes were exposed, the humans had not fired a single weapon. They had not destroyed a single ship. But they had caused more damage to the Concordat's leadership than any battle ever could. On a Zorvani news network, a brave young reporter asked the question that everyone was thinking. If the humans can do this without even fighting us, she said, what happens when they decide to actually use their weapons? No one had an answer. The psychological effect on the Concordat fleet was devastating. Soldiers who had been confident and proud became nervous and paranoid. They started seeing human threats everywhere. Some ships reported mysterious sounds in their corridors. Others claimed to find human footprints in areas that should have been sealed. Most of these reports were probably imagination, but no one could be sure anymore. Morale collapsed. Crews began refusing to leave their quarters alone. Commanders slept with weapons under their pillows. The greatest military force in galactic history was slowly falling apart, and not a single shot had been fired. Admiral Zethkai tried to restore order. He gave speeches about courage and duty. He punished soldiers who spread rumors. He ordered his fleet to begin searching for the human base of operations. But nothing he did seemed to help. The humans were always one step ahead. They seemed to know everything the Concordat was planning. When Zethkai sent scout ships to search a region of space, the scouts found nothing. But when the scouts returned, they discovered that someone had painted human flags on the outside of their ships. While they were away, the Rithkari Consortium, the species responsible for building most of the Concordat's weapons, received a shipment of 13,000 plasma cores. These cores were essential for powering the fleet's main weapons. When the shipping containers were opened, the technicians found blocks of chocolate shaped exactly like plasma cores. The real cores had vanished without a trace. On a personal level, the campaign of embarrassment continued. Military leaders found their diaries published online. Politicians discovered that recordings of their most private moments were being shared across the galaxy. Corporate executives learned that their secret, financial crimes were suddenly being investigated. The Concordat was tearing itself apart. Species that had been allies for thousands of years began blaming each other for the failures. The Zorvani accused the Rithkari of poor security. The Rithkari accused the Zorvani of incompetent leadership. Old grudges that had been buried for centuries started to resurface in the shadows between stars. Admiral Okonkwo watched it all happen. His agents sent him reports every day. The Concordat fleet was still powerful, still dangerous, but it was no longer unified. Fear and suspicion had done what human weapons never could. They're learning, Okonkwo said to his senior officers. They are starting to understand that we are not the primitive species they thought we were. but they have not yet learned the most important lesson. What lesson is that, Admiral? Asked Captain Sarah Chen, his second in command. That we could have killed them at any time. Okonkwo's face was serious. Every time we replaced their ammunition with candy, we could have replaced it with explosives. Every time we painted flags on their ships, we could have planted bombs. Every time we changed their computer systems, we could have made their reactors explode. He looked out at the stars. We chose not to. We chose embarrassment instead of death. But they need to understand that this is a choice we are making. We are not weak. We are merciful. And if they force us to stop being merciful, they will discover what 300 years of preparation really looks like. Captain Chen nodded slowly. When do we show them? Okonkwo checked his datapad. The Concordat Council was meeting again tomorrow, trying to decide how to respond to the human threat. It was time to stop playing games. Very soon, they have had their warning. Now they will learn the truth about humanity. And once they learn it, nothing in this galaxy will ever be the same again. In the darkness, the human fleet began to move. The next phase of the war was about to begin. The transmission appeared on every screen in the galaxy at exactly the same moment. Military command centers, civilian homes, space stations, starships, all of them suddenly showed the same image. It was the face of a human man with dark skin and calm eyes. He wore a simple military uniform, with no decorations except for a small patch showing. Earth. His name was Admiral James Okonkwo, and he was about to change the history of the galaxy forever. My name is James Okonkwo, he began, speaking in a voice that was quiet but somehow impossible to ignore. I am the commander of the United Earth Defense Force. For the past year, you have been wondering where humanity went. You have been searching for our fleet. You have been trying to understand what we are planning. Today, I am going to answer all of your questions. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stopped what they were doing and watched. In the Great Hall of the Concordat, the council members sat in frozen silence. On 40,000 warships, crews gathered around screens. This was the moment they had been waiting for. For 300 years, Okonkwo continued, the Concordat has treated humanity as a minor species. You looked at us and saw primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. You laughed at our small ships. You ignored our requests for equal treatment. You took our colonies whenever you wanted them. You believed that we were nothing. He paused, and something changed in his eyes. The calmness remained, but beneath it, there was something else. Something dangerous? You were wrong. The screen changed to show a star map. It was a map of the entire galaxy, with thousands of dots marking various locations. The Concordat leaders recognized some of these locations immediately. Military bases, shipyards, government buildings, communication centers. Every red dot you see represents a location where we have placed assets, Okonkwo explained. Agents, equipment, weapons. We have been doing this for 300 years. Every human scientist who came to study at your universities was gathering intelligence. Every human business that struggled to compete in your markets was actually mapping your economic systems. Every human ship that accidentally wandered into restricted space was conducting reconnaissance. The council members looked at each other with growing horror. They remembered the human scientists who had seemed so eager to learn. They remembered the human merchants who had seemed so harmless. They remembered laughing at how clumsy and primitive the humans were. It had all been an act. For 3 centuries, humanity had been watching, learning, and preparing. You wondered how we disabled your jump gates, Okonkwo said. The answer is simple. We have had agents working in your gate maintenance facilities for 200 years. You wondered how we knew your secret codes and passwords. We have been inside your computer systems since before your current leaders were born. You wondered how we got onto your ships without being detected. We built the stealth technology ourselves, using principles your scientists have not yet discovered. The map changed again. Now it showed the locations of water treatment plants, food production centers, medical supply warehouses, and power generation stations throughout Concordat space. This is what you should really be worried about, Okonkwo said. We do not need to destroy your fleet. We do not need to win battles. We simply need to cut off your supplies. Your ships cannot fly without fuel. Your soldiers cannot fight without food. Your planets cannot survive without power and water." He leaned forward, and his voice became harder. "We have positioned assets at over 300 critical infrastructure points throughout your territory. Right now, at this moment, I could give an order that would shut down the power grid on 17 Zorvani colony worlds. I could contaminate the water supply on the Rithkari homeworld. I could stop all food shipments to your military bases for the next 6 months." Silence hung over the galaxy. In military command centers, officers looked at their defensive systems with new fear. Were there human agents in their buildings right now? Were there human weapons hidden in their walls? "But I am not going to do any of those things," Okonkwo said. "Not yet. Because despite everything you have done to us, humanity does not want war. We do not want to kill billions of innocent beings just to prove a point. We are not like you." The word stung. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their floating chairs. "Here is what humanity wants," Okonkwo continued. "First, the Concordat will withdraw the redistribution decree and officially recognize human territorial sovereignty. Our colonies belong to us. Period. Second, the Concordat will grant humanity full and equal membership, the same voting rights as any other species. Third, all species currently classified as developing preserves will be given the opportunity to apply for equal membership as well." He held up 3 fingers, then slowly lowered them one by one. "These are not requests. These are requirements. You have 72 standard hours to accept them. If you do not, we will stop being gentle. We will stop replacing your weapons with chocolate and your fuel with water. We will start doing real damage." The screen flickered, showing images of Concordat infrastructure, power plants, communication satellites, fuel refineries. All of them had small red marks indicating human presence. "You have 40,000 ships," Okonkwo said. "We have 10,000. In a traditional battle, you would probably win. But we are not going to fight a traditional battle. We are going to strangle you. We are going to cut your supply lines, corrupt your communications, and turn your own systems against you. Your fleet will starve. Your planets will go dark. Your alliance will collapse as each species tries to save itself." He paused one final time. "You spent 40,000 years building a civilization based on power and fear. You believed that the strong should rule the weak. You believed that might makes right. We spent 300 years studying you, learning from your mistakes and preparing for this moment. Every cruel thing you did, every arrogant decision you made, we watched and we remembered. You taught us exactly what kind of civilization we did not want to become." Okonkwo's face filled the screen. "You have 72 hours. Use them wisely. Because after that, we stop talking and start acting. And I promise you this, you do not want to see what humanity can do when we stop holding back." The transmission ended. Screens throughout the galaxy returned to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. In the Great Hall of the Concordat, panic erupted. Council members shouted at each other. Military leaders demanded immediate attacks on human positions. Others called for surrender. No one could agree on anything. Ambassador Vexeri, still present, despite his ruined career, sat quietly and thought about Elena Vasquez's smile. He had asked her what humans could possibly do. Now he knew the answer. And he realized, with a cold feeling in his heart, that the Concordat had already lost. The only question was whether they would be smart enough to admit it, before humanity made them pay the price for their arrogance. On the bridge of his hidden flagship, Admiral Okonkwo turned off the broadcast equipment and looked at his officers. "Now we wait," he said simply. 72 hours. Let us see if they are wise enough to choose peace. If not, he shrugged, we have been preparing for 300 years. We can wait a little longer to finish what they started. Captain Chen nodded. And if they attack us directly? Okonkwo smiled. It was not a kind smile. Then we show them why humanity is not a species to be underestimated. We show them what we really built during those 300 years when they were laughing at us. We show them what happens when you back humans into a corner. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, The Concordat was scrambling to respond to a threat they had never imagined, and humanity waited, patient and ready, counting down the hours until the galaxy's future would be decided. 72 hours. That was all the time the Concordat had left to choose between peace and destruction. The clock was ticking. The 72 hours passed slowly. Throughout Concordat space, governments argued and debated. Military commanders demanded war. Civilian leaders called for peace. Religious authorities prayed for guidance. Business owners worried about their profits. Everyone had an opinion, but no one could agree on what to do. The Zorvani hegemony wanted to fight. They were proud warriors who had never surrendered to anyone. The idea of bowing to a species they had considered primitive was unbearable. Admiral Zethkai gave passionate speeches about honor and courage. He promised that his fleet could crush the humans if given the chance. But other species were not so certain. The Kathrani Collective, a peaceful species of scholars, pointed out that the humans had already proven they could reach any location in Concordat space. Fighting an enemy you could not find seemed foolish. The Yothron Federation agreed. They had extensive trade relationships with human merchants and did not want to lose those connections. Hour after hour, the debate continued. Meanwhile, strange things kept happening. Power grids flickered. Communication systems experienced unexplained delays. Military bases reported that their security cameras had been mysteriously disabled and then restored. The humans were sending a message without saying a word. They were reminding everyone that they were watching, waiting, and ready. At hour 70, the Zorvani finally accepted reality. Their homeworld's entire planetary defense grid had stopped working. When technicians investigated, they discovered that the system had been reprogrammed to do nothing but play human classical music. Beautiful, peaceful music that mocked them every time they tried to activate their weapons. If the humans could do this to the most heavily defended planet in Zorvani space, they could do it anywhere. Admiral Zethkai looked at the useless defense grid and finally understood. This war could not be won. Not by strength. Not by numbers. Not by anything the Concordat had. The vote was held at hour 71. 11 of the 12 Concordat species voted to accept humanity's terms. Only the Zorvani held out, their pride refusing to let them surrender. Then the music started playing through every speaker on their homeworld, and their representative changed his vote. The terms were accepted, unanimously. Secretary General Elena Vasquez returned to the Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat 1 year after she had left it in silence. She wore the same simple gray suit. Her face showed no emotion as she walked to the center of the room, where Ambassador Vexeri had once delivered his ultimatum. The hall looked different now. The floating chairs had been rearranged to form a circle of equals. No species sat higher than any other. The crystal pillars still stretched toward the ceiling, but they no longer felt so intimidating. They were just pillars now, just stone and light. The Treaty of Soul was a long document. It did more than just restore human territories. It completely restructured the Galactic Concordat. Humanity was granted full membership with equal voting rights. The concept of developing preserves was abolished. 17 other species that had been classified as primitive were invited to apply for membership. Trade agreements were rewritten to be fair to all parties. Military alliances were restructured to prevent any single species from dominating others. A new council was formed where every voice would be heard, not just the voices of the powerful. When the signing ceremony was complete, a Rithkar journalist approached Elena Vasquez with a question that had been bothering him since the crisis began. "Secretary General," he said, "humanity clearly had the ability to conquer the Concordat. Your fleet could have destroyed our infrastructure and brought us to our knees. Why did you choose this path instead? Why offer peace when you could have had victory?" Elena considered the question for a long moment before answering. "Conquest is expensive," she said. "Empires require constant maintenance. They breed resentment and rebellion. They collapse under their own weight eventually. We have studied your history. We have seen how every great empire in this galaxy has risen and fallen. We did not want to repeat those mistakes." She paused, looking around the great hall at the representatives of 12 species who had once laughed at humanity. "We never wanted to rule you. We just wanted you to stop trying to rule us. We wanted respect. We wanted equality. We wanted the chance to trade with you, learn from you, and grow alongside you. But those things require respect, and respect cannot be given. It must be earned." The journalist nodded slowly. "And you believe humanity has earned that respect now?" Alina allowed herself a small smile. "I think we have made our point. What happens next is up to all of us. We can be partners, or we can be enemies. We would rather be partners. But make no mistake, if anyone ever again threatens what belongs to humanity, we will be ready. We will always be ready." Admiral James Okonkwo attended the ceremony, but stood quietly in the corner. He had never been comfortable with politics and speeches. He was a military man. His job was to protect Earth and its people. Now that job was done, at least for the moment, the new Zorvani ambassador approached him cautiously. He was a young man named Vethkel, chosen to replace the disgraced representatives of the old regime. His purple eyes were humble as he faced the human admiral. "I have a question," Vethkel said, "if you are willing to answer it." Okonkwo nodded. "Ask, how did you do it? How did a species so young accomplish something that should have been impossible? We have been in space for 40,000 years. You have been in space for 300. How did you prepare for this without anyone noticing?" Okonkwo thought about his grandfather, who had served in the first human fleet. He thought about his grandmother, who had worked as a spy in Zorvani diplomatic circles. He thought about generations of humans who had watched, learned, and prepared while the galaxy ignored them. "You saw us as children," Okonkwo said finally. "That was your mistake. Children watch everything. Children learn everything. Children remember everything that happens to them. Every time you laughed at us, we remembered. Every time you cheated us, we learned. Every time you told us we were primitive, we used that as motivation to become stronger." He looked at the young ambassador with eyes that held no anger, only truth. "You spent 40,000 years believing that power comes from weapons and ships. We spent 300 years learning that power comes from knowledge and patience. We studied your weaknesses. We mapped your systems. We built networks that you never saw. And when the time came, we used everything we had learned to show you that size and age do not matter as much as you thought they did." Vethkel was silent for a long moment. "Will you teach us?" he asked finally. "Will humans share what they have learned?" Okonkwo smiled. For the first time since the crisis began, it was a genuine smile without any hardness behind it. "That is what this new partnership is supposed to be about," he said. "We have things to teach you. You have things to teach us. Together, maybe we can build something better than what existed before. But it will take time. It will take trust. And trust must be earned, just like respect." 100 years later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Galactic Concordat had been renamed the Galactic Community. It was a genuine partnership of equals. A place where new species were welcomed rather than exploited. Human culture had spread across the stars. Human music played in alien homes. Human art hung in alien museums. Human philosophy was studied in alien universities. But the exchange went both ways. Human children grew up learning alien languages and traditions. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers on projects that would have been impossible for any single species. Young Zorvani students learned about the human gambit in their history classes. They studied how their ancestors had underestimated a small species from a tiny planet, and how that mistake had changed everything. The lesson was clear: never judge others by their appearance or their age. Never assume that strength is the only form of power. Never laugh at those who seem weaker than you. On Earth. In a small museum dedicated to the events of a century ago, Elena Vasquez's simple gray suit hung in a glass case. She had lived to see the beginning of the new era, but had passed away peacefully at the age of 92. Her funeral had been attended by representatives from every species in the galaxy. Beside the suit was a plaque bearing the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto. They had first been spoken by Elena herself during the treaty signing ceremony. They had started as a warning, but had become something more. A promise, a philosophy, a statement of who humanity chose to be. The words read, "We would rather be your friends, but we will always be ready to be your equals." Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the suit and read those words. Many of them left with tears in their eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of hope. Hope that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Hope that the future would be built on partnership rather than domination. Admiral James Okonkwo lived long enough to see his great-grandchildren grow up in a galaxy where humans were respected and valued. He died surrounded by family, both human and alien. His last words spoken to his youngest great-granddaughter were simple. "Never let them make you feel small," he said. "No matter who you are or where you come from, you have value. You have worth. And if anyone ever tries to tell you otherwise, remember what we did. Remember that the smallest species in the galaxy changed everything. Remember that patience and wisdom will always win against cruelty and pride." The little girl nodded, not fully understanding, but remembering the words. Someday she would understand. Someday she would tell her own children and grandchildren. The story would be passed down through generations. A reminder of what humanity had accomplished and what they stood for. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth had struck back, not with weapons of destruction, but with patience, intelligence, and the determination to be treated as equals. And in the end, that had been enough. It had been more than enough. It had been everything.